Hello, welcome back to Mystic Hour. While we have technical difficulties, we're back doing Mystic Hour Podcast today. I'm your host, Christy Mystic Water, right here on Proficiency Bonus. We're doing something that we haven't done in a while, which is a proper podcast sit-down conversation. This is technically a takeover by our lovely Victoria, but before we get into that, we're going to do our usual shout-outs and sponsors. Our first sponsor is the lovely Little Dragon Core. Little Dragon Core is a Canadian-based dice company that supplies all kinds of cool tabletop gear. You can definitely go check them out over on their Twitter at Little Dragon Co. 1 to stay updated on all their awesome products. And if you enter in the new coupon code is PROBONUS, all one word, and you get 10% off your order at checkout at littledragoncore.com. So thank you, sponsors. And as usual, big thanks to Twitch, OBS Streamlabs, Many-Sided Dice, and Team MZ. It's thanks to their support that we get to do what we love to do here. This Twitch schedule should be posted down below the Twitch feed, as well as in the YouTube description box down below. We got a whole bunch of different D&D games that you can check out for all the major published modules and homebrew content, as well as Shadowrun once a month every Friday. And I think that's it for my announcements, so I'm going to bring you over to our lovely guests this evening. We haven't seen this screen in a minute. Hi, guys.
Hey.
Hello.
Okay.
Do we want to do you want to do your spiel first, and then we'll go around the table to do introductions, since it's been a minute since we've done an actual sit-down podcast?
Yeah, I think that sounds like a good idea. We can do that.
All right, so you go ahead and do your spiel.
Hello, everyone. I am Victoria, and this is my takeover episode of Mystic Hour, where we are looking at Dungeons & Dragons and distancing, trying to get a better understanding of what it means to play games and Dungeons & Dragons during the time of a pandemic, where there's kind of a lot of a shift towards digital technology and what that means for playing games. Again, I'm Victoria, and you can catch me on Wednesday nights playing in the Waterdeep Dragon Heist game, and occasionally bombing Christie's gameplay of Mass Effect.
Hell yeah.
So, yeah.
Twitch chat, please let us know if any problems arise, and we will attempt to fix it, because that's what we do here on Proficiency Bonus. It's always technical difficulties.
Yeah.
That's what day it is. It's technical difficulties.
80% technical difficulties,
Yeah.
20% D&D.
Hell yeah. Checks
Chasing
out.
our tails around these computers.
Hell yeah. All right.
Yeah, I'm getting, like, it's very frozen, but it's like, it's okay. It's sort of playing. But yeah, Twitch chat, if the video's messed up, just let us know. Okay. Introductions. I'm going to start from what I can see on the Mystic Hour feed. I'll go to, next to me is Matt.
That's
Who the
me.
heck are ya?
That's my name. I am Matt. I run our Tuesday programming. I run a show called Tabletop Legends, where we play homebrew 5th edition D&D campaign that I created for specifically for Proficiency Bonus. That's it, right? Oh, I play in a Monday game as a player. That's me.
Hey.
I'm here.
Okay, Michael. Who the heck are ya?
Hey, how's it going, everybody? My name's Michael. I am also a dungeon master here at Proficiency Bonus in a couple of different settings. I dungeon master Delvin Dash, which was the show you probably tuned into right before this one. I am dungeon master for Kindred Lists on Friday nights. I am game master for Shadowrun on Friday nights, on First Fridays. And I also do some dungeon mastering for our live stream games, which Dirty 20. And what else do I do?
Don't you play in
Yeah, the new Eberron, which is around the table. My buddy Charner's DMing. I actually get to be a player for that one. So it's interesting. I love it.
I was very happy when I saw you were finally getting a chance to sit in a player seat for once, Mr. Perpetual DM.
The view is quite different.
I bet.
On the screen.
I bet.
And the fear is very real.
Alrighty, and last but certainly not least, Lip, who the heck are ya?
Who am I really? Who are we all? I am Rip. You can see me first Fridays of every month as Kill Switch, aka DJ Solo, as we go through what is it, the sixth world, the future of New Orleans and cyberpunk and all this fun stuff. I am also second wing to Christie's Mystic Hour, helping come up with some content. So you may occasionally see me here on the show more often, as you. But yeah, I'm just hanging around, pop in wherever I can. Just a
And it's
ninja.
been a minute because we haven't
It's
done a
been a
Mystic
while.
we haven't done a Mystic Hour podcast official proper in like a couple months.
Forever.
Because I've been
yeah.
so busy with these games that I've dived into.
We
So
kind of took off. We took off with that, but it's great. I'm glad
Yeah.
for it. I'm glad for it. We get to see some good games.
I've missed my co-producer.
Alrighty, well, that's everybody. And before we jump in, just really quick, because we are going to be discussing kind of a different socio-technical like context of gaming within the pandemic situation right now. None of us are medical professionals. We're not doctors. We're not public health officials, and that's not what we're here to talk about. If you have questions about the pandemic, if you don't know what you should be doing right now, please listen to some public health officials, listen to doctors. They know what they're doing. We are not here to give anybody advice on what they should be doing during this pandemic, so please don't take this that way. We're just getting a little philosophical here and talking about some other stuff. So just always a reminder that we don't do that. We're literally like, I think everybody here except for me is like an artist of some kind and like a performer. So yeah, we're just vibing. So
We're not doctors, we just play them.
Vibe
on
check.
TV.
I don't know why just vibing makes me feel like I need to be doing this, but this is where I'm at right now.
We're just vibing.
Just
Yeah,
vibing.
just wanted to get that disclaimer out of the way because, you know, it's the internet. Just covering all of our base. But yeah, is there anything anyone wants to say before we jump in?
If you all are looking for like legit information and you just want to know, always check out cdc.gov. They have
Yes.
all the info there. That is the place to go. That is the place to be.
Yeah.
Or the
I would
equivalent
like to-
for your country.
Yeah. that-
Because Canada beach.
This is the internet. I'd like to say that I am an expert on all things, and everything that I say for the next roughly hour and a half, you should take 100% seriously. And I will be shouting all of my opinions at the maximum volume.
Thank you for that. I love it. Okay. So, I don't really have any like specific order necessarily for these questions, so I'll just start from the top, I guess. So I guess the question is not so much whether or not life and like gaming and Dungeons and Dragons has been changed by the pandemic situation, because I think it's safe to say that most parts of life have. And I think for a lot of the people here, in one way or another, they're experiencing that. So that's not so much our question, because I do think that we can safely assume that for most people, things have changed. My first question is this shift that we're seeing towards a lot more digital play. What do you think this tells us about what playing games is actually about?
As we all rush in to answer this question.
That's
So I
totally
said I was
fine.
going to
If
shout my
anyone
opinions
needs
at the top of my voice.
time-
I will happily. No, I'll happily jump in if somebody needs to.
Yeah, if people
everybody's
need
like,
time to
everybody like,
think,
who's
please
gonna
take
talk?
time. Yeah.
So you said these to us a little earlier, so I was thinking about these questions a little bit today. My answer for this would be that I think what we see, what we've seen in this situation where everybody has very quickly been forced into a situation where like in-person social interactions are not really happening. And then everybody immediately goes like, let's figure out how to do all of this online. To me, what that says is that play and games, whether it's D&D or online or any other thing, is at its core it's about the fact that human beings, us at people, we're social creatures. We we need to connect with members of our tribe, if you want to like take an evolutionary look at it. And I think you can quickly discover that, like, D&D, or if that's what we're focusing on, D&D was sort of has always just been the vehicle through which we've been exercising that need that everybody has to connect with other people and to have that sort of social linkage between themselves and others around them.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer.
To piggyback off of that as well, I think that on top of the idea of just like still wanting that sense of like social interaction with the social distancing, I think at least from my perspective, being an artist as well, you still want the ability to create. So it's one thing to just be at home and just kind of like play The Sims and build characters and just like know that I have this character, but that character in a voided space doesn't really tell the story that you want to tell.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I think of very heavily is like the need for our Shadowrun to happen was that I really wanted to know what else can my character Killswitch do going forward, and having that sense of progress for that character and that storytelling with that character still makes me feel like I'm a part of a sense of society, a part of like that global storytelling that's still there. Because it's very easy when you get locked into your own house, you're not feeling like you're contributing to the full progression of storytelling. Be it your own or other people's. But once everybody gets together, especially when you think about like theater, collaborative music, just kind of like collaborative artwork, you know that you want to contribute to something, and being a part of that contribution of things doesn't necessarily mean like I'm good at drawing or I'm good at making music like everybody else. As a performance artist, I know that I can contribute a character to a story, and that feels like just as equal as make music with someone.
Yeah, I definitely kind of agree with both of the opinions that were just stated. I think for me, like, thinking about what play and what games in general, be it Dungeons and Dragons or any other game, a computer game that you play by yourself, strategy games, any other tabletop games, the thing I really am thinking of now with the contributions that both of you just made is that for me, like, being able to play is a way to tell stories, and telling stories has always been a social thing. That's the way that people shared lessons, and they were able to connect with each other and spread warnings, and forge bonds with each other. So I think that for me, digital play is a way for us to continue that when we can't necessarily be doing it in person. And I know that some people might play because they want to feel like they are a winner, or because they want to feel smart, like they want to do good strategies.
Oh, everybody froze. Give me a minute. We have to wait for everybody to come back. Hello? Hello?
Twitch, hello?
For
Hello?
some reason, I feel like rapid arm movements will help.
It worked! You're back!
I don't know why.
Oh, you were like mid-conversation and everything just stopped.
Power.
Of course, the night that we're talking about, technology is the night that the technology just decides to go fully haywire. Love that.
It's revolting. There's no stopping it.
Like, for me, like, it's, I like to play certain RPGs because to me that's a conversation, and it's the creators telling me a story that I get to participate in. Mm-hmm. And tabletop games are a lot like that, but it's a collaborative storytelling effort. So I think that that's a big part of why I feel the need to continue doing this, especially because I'm not really seeing a lot of other people otherwise.
I think you brushed against something there that sort of sparked something in the back of my mind in talking about play as as a way to tell stories, or as a way to let out aggression, or as a way to engage with something strategically. It makes me think of like nature documentaries in a way. You see nature documentaries, and you see they have footage of like two lion cubs wrestling with each other, and when you think about like the animal world, the play that animals engage in is essentially they wrestle and they fight and they engage in activities that are necessary for their survival, for their their existence, living in nature, living in the world, but are done in a way, play is essentially a way to experience those things and gain access to that in an environment that is safe. Two lion cubs wrestling, might be practicing the skills that they're going to need to survive when they get older, but they're not necessarily going to hurt or kill each other. I think that's an apt sort of translation to what play is for us, or at least for me, when you start to mentions like storytelling and and adding something creatively, you can sort of...
Oh my god! This is so good. Just give it a minute, guys. He's going somewhere.
Yo.
I think it was still online. I think we're still good.
No, everyone froze. He was mid-conversation and everyone froze again. Oh my,
jeez.
oh my god.
It's frozen on my feed right
Repeat
now.
everything you just said perfectly, word for word.
No.
No.
We got most. I think we got most of what you were saying about the type
talking
cubs
about,
and
like,
these,
like play as a safe learning experience,
and a means of like how human survival and how we cope with living.
You need to be able to experience dangerous situations or to get even deeper with it, like especially in D&D, we might explore topics of emotional trauma or things that can be really, really heavy and might be something that is a very valuable way to be able to process through through some of these stuff, through some of these things in an environment that at the end of the day is like, it is a game. I can step back.
It's a safe environment.
Friends. We're all in this together, and I trust them and they trust me, and you're kind of in this social pact with the people that you sit down around the table to tell these stories with.
I do want to piggyback off of that, because there are some beautiful moments that's been happening in the last couple of weeks. As we all know, it's been a lot of stress that's been happening, a lot of really heavy information kind of blown out there in the media. And one of the things that actually me and Vic were talking about before we started the stream was that I worked with a lot of students playing a tabletop version of D&D where we did explore a lot of those heavier things. Particularly, we talked about what does it mean to have a fictional race like orcs or half-elves relate to how we see ourselves in this world of mixed race, Latino. What is that? How do those things play? And what does this world look like to add that as characters in the game? One thing that did happen in one of the sessions was that we had, for anybody who's not familiar with D&D, a murder hobo situation where children were learning that I can kill things in a fictional world and get points for it. So let me do that to every single thing that happens in anything that crosses paths with me. But then we actually talked about the gravity of what does it mean if you just go around slaughtering things. And there was a lot of really beneficial conversations that happened, to the point where once education kind of shut down and we don't know, we're understood now that we're not going to go back to the schools for the rest of the semester. We did hear back from some of the students, and the ones that were in my class were just I remember we were talking about this kind of fictional world, and in that fictional world there's this resource, and there's people who are scarce and kind of not really knowing what's going to happen next. And I remember you told us that being a murder hobo around a bunch of folks who just don't know what's going to happen next just causes that sense of fear. But you also told us that we can be heroes in this game, and I really want to know what it's like to be a hero now in this type of world. I had a bunch of tears in reading those emails, but it was a really beautiful moment to kind of see students who had just started learning this game to see this world is fictional, but this world is real. But I can take myself out of the real world and look at it from a third perspective to just say I can put this in perspective so it makes sense. And that skill set is to me, it's one of the reasons why I really love D&D as an educational tool, because it takes whatever situation that you're in, can allow you to step out for whatever your situation is and look at it as a third party, or give it to somebody else and say, like, I don't know what's going on. There's some kids that start figuring out, like, in their own lives, I don't know if it's great for everything, but their decision is like, sometimes you just have to take a dice and just roll it to kind of figure out what's going on in your life and let that be the deciding factor of what happens. If that's a system that works for you, these are systems that help, and I would rather have those systems in place and people to learn that, so that when stuff like this happens, they have more of a perspective of what to do and how to kind of like cope with things that are moving.
Also, the fact of just jumping off what Victoria said about games, this is probably more about that social interaction when it comes to like more like the social games like RPGs and tabletop games, not necessarily like single player video games and stuff like that, but socially I think we learn and we know more about not only the world but also ourselves when we gather around in these social context games. And I think somewhere deep down inside we desire that at all times. Like, you know, I don't know. I like what Matt was saying. We are social beings.
Yep.
Deep down inside, we desire being around others because we learn more about the world. We learn more about other people. We learn more about ourselves in that same way as we interact with one another.
I mean, even with the single-player RPGs, like I'm playing Mass Effect, and it is single-player, but I always invite people to jump in video or voice call with me and interact with the Twitch chat, because I don't want to be going through this story alone. It's a little overwhelming, and I like having the emotional, moral support, even digitally, with people that are going through the story and the emotions with me.
Yeah, you feel like somebody's got your back.
Right? Yeah, especially when you're making decisions that are very questionable and you're like, is this the right thing? Help me, people.
Well, yeah, and like it kind of makes me think, especially because I've been trying to do my best to show up in voice call or in chat whenever you're playing Mass Effect, because that's a game that I love, and to me it kind of makes me think of like that's an experience that I had and I learned something from, and I feel like I've been able to like impart some lessons and suggestions on you for how I know you would want, because I know you, and I know what's going to traumatize you. So I know that if I can pass along a lesson from a story I've already experienced, then you'll take something from the story too.
And honestly, like you do it so well because you're very delicate about spoilers, but I feel like if I hadn't had you from the beginning until now, from Mass Effect 1 to Mass Effect 2, like you weren't holding my hand, but you were giving me certain supportive messages that made me question what this story was trying to tell and made me question what my character was feeling. And I probably wouldn't have looked at it from that perspective if I didn't have you in the voice call with me. I feel like the story and my enjoyment of it would be totally different if I was doing this solo and not online.
I think that touches on something that is... For the drawbacks that I feel like the sort of barrier of a screen between social interactions has, which I'm sure I'll touch on when we get to that in the conversation, but I think that touches on something that I think is the beautiful thing about the advent of technology when it comes to gaming, in that I think we all probably are old enough. I know some of us are older than others here, but I think we're still all at least of the age where we remember the time not all that long ago when like being into what would be like nerd culture was a very isolating experience.
Oh,
and
yeah.
You felt like you were the only person in the world who was into this thing. And it wasn't really until the internet and technology, expanded that you could find this world where it was like, oh my God, like there are so many people who like the things that I like.
And back then we didn't have a choice. We had to do it alone.
And so I think that's one of the beautiful things about technology when it comes to play and gaming, is that it does allow you to find companionship and friends and to find your tribe, whatever your thing might be, whether it's Mass Effect or D&D or like
World of Warcraft.
World of Warcraft. It's very awesome.
It's all of our shame right now. And we all started playing World of Warcraft again once quarantine started. You know, or even if it's like weird stuff, like, you know, who knows?
Jackbox.
Jackbox, yes.
Super specific gifs of cats wearing like high-heeled shoes. You know, I don't know what. You can find people who get joy out of the things that you get joy out of.
Our Discord server is a saving grace for all of our sanities. Honestly, even though it's insane, it keeps us sane.
It is the beauty of technology when it comes to, you know, the way that people want to play and want to experience games and fun, is that they can, you know, where prior to technology, like, you could spend your whole life thinking you're the only person who's into this, which I personally believe is how people become like serial killers. Is that like they just like, I gotta keep everything secret, and then like you end up spinning out and getting weird. Whereas if you can find like people to share with, your friend. Your friend group keep you tethered to reality a little bit.
So it kind of seems like we're saying that like game playing is about telling stories and connecting with other people, and having digital technology becoming more and more intertwined with games and playing is a way to forge more connections and kind of reduce isolation. And then I think I think it seems like we're saying that digital technology has been a big part in making games shift from counterculture to mainstream.
Yes,
oh, for sure.
For sure, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. It's very interesting. Like, if you look at computers, originally were created as computational devices. They're basically just really, really good at keeping time and crunching numbers. And so you kind of think about who was the first person to turn a computer into a device for play, and kind of taking that technology and just completely turning it on its head, going from a work device to a leisure device. And it's just kind of like a very interesting thing to think about, how now it's become a kind of tool for connection and communication.
I just wanted to make a quick comment about that, because I think it was very interesting. I was, going down the YouTube realm of Black Abyss, where you just research everything. I don't know if everybody's old enough to remember, but one of the things I was thinking about is that very specific question, like, when did technology, computer, software, hardware become a leisurely thing? And it dated back to like Atari, but before Atari, there was military module software for simulation.
Yep.
And there was a soldier that was like, I guess, bored, wondering how you can simulate this tech as a simulated game. And so he started playing with it a lot. Later on, he found out that there is ways that you can actually create new technologies for like battle tactics and war tactics. And
that man went on to create Call of Duty.
And his name, Albert Einstein.
He was Jim Call of Duty, and he
Jim Call of Duty.
But
yeah, I mean, Lip, you're right. Like, computers started as military devices, and then transitioned into like the financial sector and like office work.
Yeah. And then that shift into there's a movie that I'm not going to get right. I think it's literally called War. Beautiful 80s movie that is probably terrible.
Is Matthew Broderick in it?
Yep.
I think it is War Games.
Yeah, it's War Games.
Right. The idea of it is interesting, because you play this game that's a simulation, and then because our minds get so wrapped up into like the gaming aspect of it, he doesn't realize that he's actually setting up warfare by playing this game. But I think in that same situation, it still goes back to the same idea of like social interact. This simulation is there to create a basis for you to understand how to navigate the real world, which is a third kind of use for it. We play these games because we hopefully, like Matt was saying, learn how to be better people when we're around other folks. None of us actually want to become serial killers, so maybe we play a little bit more D&D, we'll learn that maybe that's not our goal.
That's how we get our serial killer out. We just become murder hobos in the party. You become Molten is what happens.
All DMs are, you got to make sure that when your players murder hobo, you punish them sufficiently, because you are the front line against serial killers. You make sure they understand that's not okay.
I would like to rage.
Would not like to rage. You would like to sit down and talk.
You need a timeout.
So I think we've kind of touched on my second question. The first part was kind of like the first question, but it kind of seems like my second question also was like, how do the computers influence our understanding of games and playing? And I feel like we also kind of answered that with the second part of this answer that we've given. How have computers and digital technology changed the way that you understand the concept of play or the way that you understand games? Especially for those of you who perhaps got into the hobby in the more organic, like IRL setting, and then maybe transitioned. Like if that was your experience, was playing at the table first, how does that compare to now? How did the computers change your understanding of D&D or any kind of game?
Well, this isn't D&D related, but I do distinctly remember the transition from tabletop games like Monopoly or Scrabble or Guess Who or Connect 4, because that was all we had. And then suddenly your family gets the family computer and you have access to, albeit not very much hard drive, but just enough to maybe push it to play the original Sims. Just, you'll have like 700 gigs left, or 700 megabytes.
Carmen Sandiego.
Where in the world is Carmen Sandiego?
For 6 years.
Maple Story, like the freaking Gaia Online.
Oregon Trail in Illinois.
Oregon Trail.
Yeah.
Oregon Trail I only played in school, but like when it finally came to the home, all those board games went back into the closet. Like, we stopped playing them.
Mm-hmm. Actually, there's a funny story with me and my brother and my mom. So it was mostly me and my brother and my mom growing up. And we had these kind of days, because I only saw my brother on weekends. So we had these weekends where it was just like intensive. We're going to every museum. We're doing everything like in these 2 days, because Sunday my brother leaves. And so we would have game night days where we would get out all the board games, all the card games, and we just play them all the way through. And then one day we got the household computer, and let me just say, me and my brother were very, very close until this computer came into the house.
Mom says it's my turn to play Carmen Sandiego or Jump
Me and my dad.
Math blasters.
My dad wanted to play Duke Nukem, and I wanted to play something called Cats, where I had digital cats on my desktop, and he wanted to play Duke Nukem, and we would fight over.
I remember Duke Nukem.
Duke Nukem,
Yeah,
and like
I
Need for
remember that.
Speed, the original, is what he wanted to play, and I wanted to play like the simulations, and we would have arguments over whose time it was to play the video game, and he would say, "My house, my rules. I paid for the computer. You didn't pay for it," and so like you lose every time. But he also transitioned from tabletop to freaking digital, so it was such a, I think regardless of age, we all really quickly adapted and enjoyed immensely the ability to play games on a computer.
And I think what happened for us, and I think it's something that I still kind of live with today, because my brother wanted to play, I still can't remember. It was something like I Spy or Clue or something like that. It was a very mystery-based kind of game, and it was probably fine for like a 13, 14-year-old, but I was like 6 or 7, and for some reason, every time I played the game, it spooked the crap out of me. Like I would play it and I would have nightmares, but my brother loved it, and because he loved it, I wanted to love it too, so I wanted to jump in and play. So eventually, me and my brother usually ended up like rolling around on the floor, punching each other out, and then my mom was just like, turn the computer off, get the board games out. We're going to learn how to play one of these other games. And it was like obscure games that like nobody probably even wanted to play because they were so bad.
Parcheesi.
We played the
Upwards.
Harry Potter Clue. And the thing about Harry Potter Clue is that you had to know like the spell name. So it was like which spell killed who in which classroom.
Does every game of Harry Potter Clue end with Snape killed Dumbledore?
Oh, always,
Because it should, right?
always. Oof, too soon.
But I think that's something I do miss. I do wish that there was a way that can transfer into the technological world. There is something about, at least to me, the reason why I still value a lot of like unboxing, putting stuff together and sitting with everybody. It's the idea of like literally freshly opening the box, looking at the menu, opening up the like big map. Everybody's kind of setting things up together. We just recently, the group that I play with every Friday, we've been playing tabletop, where it shows you the virtual table and you can open up the box and kind of move stuff around. It just doesn't have that same like excitement of when you as a group sit down and open the box and try and play it for the first time, and then know that there's like 5 million pieces to this board game, and like how does this matter to anything? Why does this look like an interesting shape or so? Why does this have to represent this character? And then when you play, you finally say, I really enjoyed that experience. You still get the same experience when you're online and you're talking to folks and you're playing with these characters and you have like information that's sent to you through Discord or through Roll20 or through Fantasy Grounds, and you see the effects. But at the end of the day, I think that there's something unique and fresh about opening something new. When we all play Roll20 is new. And what may be exciting for me is like when Micheal creates a design that he like hand drew himself on Roll20, and I opened it up and I was like, this looks really cool. But then, like we were talking about earlier, Micheal doesn't get to have that experience of having that excitement because he drew it. He's showcasing his work to other people. But for all of us to have the same type of excitement at the same time unboxing something would be nice.
That comes very close to a thing that is. So I'm gonna take the contrarian standpoint here, because this is a feeling that I have had about. So I think the addition of technology into play and into gaming, whether it be video games, tabletop games, whatever you want to have it be, I think the reason that it is so immediately, I mean, we all just basically gave examples of how like the second a digital version of like, you know, whatever play we might have enjoyed when we, you know, before we had it, whether it was because we were young or because it hadn't, you know, been invented yet in some of our cases. The minute it comes out, like you immediately flock to that, is because I feel that it provides that thing that your hindbrain unevolved, you know, millions of years ago from our ancestors, you know,
goblin brain,
the goblin brain, social being brain craves all the things we've talked about, the social interactions, the way to experience things in a safe environment, all that stuff. It provides all of that stuff to you, and it feeds it to you without your brain having to do as much work imaginatively. So it's almost like drugs in a way, and that's why, you know, you hear people get addicted is you know, you get this thing that your goblin brain wants, and it's fed to you in the easiest way possible, as opposed to, you know, using D&D an example as an example. The reason that I much prefer D&D around a table with a group of people, you know, interacting directly is I feel the less stuff for them to manipulate, and the less like specific the thing on the table is, and the more the game is like in everybody's mind, the more I see everybody really, you know, getting more invested and really being more creative and thinking more, to the point where I've even, you know, I used to put very, very detailed maps out anytime they were going to be in an area. Like the whole thing would have a map, and it would all be set out. And what I found was that instead of like diving and losing themselves in the story, people were losing themselves in like whatever was drawn in front of them. And it would be like, let me move my token here. What's in this 5x5 pixel? So I started going like much more broad, where I'd use like a large area map, and then everything else I would start doing narratively, because I felt like it caused people to take that step away from what technology just hands you on your own. And for me, that's a more creatively and more socially and whatever you want to call it, fulfilling experience. And that's why my sort of feeling is that for all the great things that technology does bring to play in gaming, I think that's a major disadvantage to it. Is I think that's something that we all lose in the process of having this like beautifully rendered world just like beamed into our faces by our screens all the time. Is it just all the work is done for you? It does the
imaginative legwork for you,
right?
And it's a lot easier to. I mean, actually, I can't necessarily speak to that
because
with drawing
Wednesdays,
a map on a computer is a lot probably quicker than having to. Because I mean, Michael, I know you have like created a lot of set pieces for your table games, and probably like the work of having to create these like custom like tree forts and boats is painstaking. And if you mess up, you can't just hit undo.
Right.
You know, like
True. Yep. Many a sailing ship has met the trash can.
Oh, buddy.
No, just to bounce off that though, I think what Matt's saying is true. I think it also depends on the players in your game too.
Yes.
Depends on the people around the table or the people that you have surrounded by. I think the reason that I do it is, number one, because I'm an artist and I am just like that. I dive into. I like to build things with my hands. There's just something about that tactile notion of being able to take something and create it out of just household junk that you've got lying around. But I think as far as like technology goes, and bouncing off of what Matt just is, I also think of when I'm doing my games around a table, I'm not only thinking of it as, okay, we're playing this game as a group, it's just the five. I'm also thinking, hey, there's probably 20 other people on Twitch World that are watching us. So where my mind is going there is, I can't assume that my Twitch viewer knows what Dungeons and Dragons is and knows that this whole world is just imagined in your mind as we're going through it. So what I like to do is, when I build my set pieces, I like to give them pretty good rough outline of what it is that I'm describing. So that way, because I don't do all the set pieces. The only set pieces that I do are ones that I know there could be a potential for somebody to get attacked or have some kind of encounter going on. A lot of the other stuff we just do, because I can't build the entire world. That's just not going to happen.
I don't want to. I'm like including set pieces. For me, it's like I like world maps and like city maps, regional maps, and then I like set piece for if they have to fight. I don't do anything in between anymore.
Yeah,
that's my feeling. That's where you lose people.
Yeah, and you've got too much time invested in it too on the back end. So
I was just gonna say, like, if you have, like those amazing Dwarven Forge sets where people will literally build an entire city on their tabletop, I think kind of going back to like what Matt was saying is then people get too caught up in the nitty gritty details of like, okay, I need to position myself on this exact 5x5 square, and they get too caught up in those logistics. Whereas if if you kind of show them a general picture of what's going on, but then use that theater of the mind.
I was just going to say theater of the mind, because that's how we play on Wednesdays. We don't have maps. Everything we do is theater of the mind. So it forces us to engage with each other and kind of double check that we're all imagining the same situation or the same. And sometimes it gets lost in translation, but most of the time I feel like theater of the mind keeps me more engaged.
Yeah, and I mean, we can, if we're doing theater of the mind, like, we can have a description of the setup, but I don't have to worry, like, I either can get to where I want to go or I can't. I can say I want to, flank this creature, and I either can or I cannot.
Yeah.
And it's not a matter of trying to find that one square that I can, like, find that the DM missed.
Finesse it, yeah.
Yeah, it's less about the strategy and more about the experience of the whole story.
I'm gonna go. This might be a tangent, but I'm gonna go all teacher / educator on
Hit us.
Because I'm an art teacher. I'm very visual. That's just my nature. But I'm also very tactile. I think I learn when I see something and then I do it myself. Like that's the way I learn best. I think there's probably other people out in the world that it's the same way for them. I could watch a YouTube video on how to do something a million times, but until I actually do it, I don't retain that knowledge. I don't learn that. And I think that, I think that's why I like to be a dungeon master for games such as this, because even on the back end with the computer technology, I love to learn new things. So I push myself to learn that computer technology that I may not have known before as this was all, taking place. So I just like to build things. I like to draw the world. And then the reason that I like to do that so much is because of the collaborative social aspect that we were talking about before. The story is going to suck if I'm sitting here telling it myself. It's going to be awful. I've written like 3 or 4 one-shot adventures, and I've done play tests of them. And every time I'm done and I do like little reviews of the people, they end up making it so much, because the stuff that I came up with, it would have been absolute crap if I would have just said, "Oh, this is done." But don't
do yourself dirty like that, Michael. Yeah. How dare you?
No, it's not that. It's more so the notion of that social interaction around that table is what builds and makes that story come to life. And the computers give us the option to do that. Whereas in the past, if you're sitting around, like I only had one buddy in high school that I knew played role-playing games. So we would just play 2-player role-playing games because we didn't know we had anybody else out there.
I will say too, just piggybacking off of that, I'm a writer. I write plays, I write poetry, I write dialogue, and that was one of the biggest things that when me and Chrissy were having our episode about dialogue and just like writing characters, it's impossible for a writer to write for everyone, like write everyone's perspective, everyone's ideas. And that's one of the beautiful things about this game is there's a lot of times where I wish back when I was writing that one play, I made like this kind of D&D set world where I put people at a table and gave them the unities of their character and said, all right, this is a situation, let's hear it hashed out, because I can say, to me, it's agreeable to say this, and then it's also agreeable for me to respond this way, and it's also kind of agreeable for me to hear this conversation and chime in this way. But it's another thing for me to have this story and then have somebody like Vic, wait a second, but all of this is crap, and I'm upset about all of these different things, and wait a second, I want a taco right now. And that is a very real response that can happen in a moment. And I was like, you know what? Would have never thought about any of those things in that scene, and it makes it so much better. And you can't there's certain things that you just can't just know in your head. You have
that's improv, baby.
That's the beauty of improv, which is something that I think is a big hit, at least here in Chicago. Improv has been one of the hardest things for us to cope with not having in the city, because it's one of the building blocks of the city. So to not have that not have that as an option to just kind of go to, a lot of folks who are improv artists are just like, we don't know which direction to go. And I think for a lot of people, it has been like, let's play these improv based games online. There's a company that does like murder mysteries, all centered around like having dinners and doing improv as these characters, and then there's a different murderer each night. The company has decided that they want to go online where they can bring folks into the area, and there's one host, and then essentially everybody that jumps in, they give their character. So you just show up as your own character, and you kind of play through this like improv world with a murder mystery. It's a really cool idea. I don't know if it works. I was thinking about trying it, but I don't know how it works. But I think that's still that sense of crisis. I still need to have that response, because our company just generally doesn't work without that response of the audiences.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think oh, go ahead, Michael.
Oh, I was going to say, to jump on, with computers and changing the way, we play games and understand them. I think it also helps all of us as either dungeon masters or people who play in games because recently I was talking to somebody on Twitter who's going through and they're watching some of our stuff on YouTube to give them ideas of how to do their campaign. So I think the computer is really showing up. It's like this stockpile of resources that we've got that we can access almost at any point in time to search how other people are doing things and give us more ideas for playing the games. And also, you guys, the proficiency bonus squad, I mean, we've got some amazing artists in this group. Like, Matt says he doesn't draw his maps, but he should draw more because his stuff is freaking amazing. So
don't ever want to see something
go check out some of his just his city drawings and stuff. Amazing. But it gives us a means of being able to put those resources out there for other people to use for their stuff.
It goes back to the idea of like providing connectivity.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to a website called meetup.com.
Hey, that's an old one. Hey,
that when I decided I wanted to start playing D&D, I went to meetup.com. I found a group wanting to start a D&D campaign. I mean, an in-person D&D campaign. I started with them. Through that group, I met some of the other folks, and like essentially, it turned into a chain reaction that has led me now to. I'm in 2, in-person games that I've been hosting in my house for 3.5 years now. Some of my best friends came to me through that. I came to proficiency bonus through Sarah, who's plays in everybody's game at this point. She was the one who approached me and was like, "Hey, they're looking for more DMs on proficiency bonus." So like, you track back through all these things. I purport, being a big, a person who's largely in favor of the the in-person nature of this stuff. But the first step to even make that happen in this day and age that I had to take was I had to go through technology and go through screens to, to find out that like, oh my God, there's like 50 people within 10 minutes of my house that are also looking for people to play Dungeons and Dragons with. And then now I'm on a podcast talking about it.
I had always wanted to play D&D, and I was watching different actual play YouTube, podcasts and shows, but I had a really, really hard time getting a group of people together because of scheduling issues, and it's hard to get a group of people together at a table. And by chance, I went on to Roll20 and found the proficiency bonus application for the Wednesday game, and I pretty much only play digitally at this point. So like for me, computers were the vehicle through which I was actually able to play instead of just spectate. And so for me, I'm always grateful for that. I'm definitely the kind of person who is skeptical of technology, but at the same time, I'm very grateful for it. And I think we actually have kind of touched on this next question a little bit, and so I kind of want to segue into that. But what do we like and not like about digital gaming? And whatever your pros and cons are for that, what do you think that says about like the human condition and what it means to be a person? Because I know I definitely have an answer for this, especially after Gen Con back in August. And getting to meet Christy and Michael like in person. I think for me, like having that digital technology makes it a lot easier to be able to play because you can connect with more people. But at the same time, that sensory experience kind of that Michael was talking about, like you're really only getting the visual and the auditory experience of a person, because a person has a force of personality that I think you really have to be around them in person to experience. Like I didn't feel like I really knew Christy until I got to hold Christy, little.
I'm so small. I'm sorry.
And
it's weird. You look completely normal sized on screen.
I'm good.
Well, and getting to see that like Matthew and Derek are these like behemoths of men, like 6'1" billion, and getting to feel the anxiety of playing together and like, oh no, I grabbed Christy's arm like out of just a reaction, like, oh, I'm so nervous, and getting to like physically feel each other's nerves, and getting to be in a convention center smelling a bunch of stinky nerds. Like, you don't necessarily get that with the digital
I'm okay.
technology.
I had to check.
I'm small.
So, I'm a people person and I like to be around people, but I also take what I can get. So I love that digital technology has given me the ability to play and meet all of these people across the world. But at the same time, I don't get to hold Christy or smell her when I want to give her a big hug, not that you're a stinky nerd. I don't get that same experience of her whole
You heard it
person.
here first. Digital technology.
I'm stinky.
Christy stank.
I'm stinky.
Hey Siri, why can't I smell Christy on my computer?
As soon as they develop an app that can replicate Christy Musk, will be
No!
3D print the smell of Christy.
Ugh.
What is happening right now?
To take a little bit of attention off of Christy.
I think. Well,
who's on the chat.
I know what you mean though, because I 100% agree with you, Victoria, because I've had the same visceral response at Gen Con. I had the same visceral response being able to hug Lip in person, hug Dale in person. It's a completely different feeling, and the fact that I had both Lip and Dale in my bed while we're trying to Discord with our Monday group.
Oh my god, that was so weird.
It was the most insane thing, but it would never have happened if we hadn't found this connection through proficiency bonus.
Buried in blankets.
Yeah. I don't know what it is about being a person and experiencing another person there in front of you and getting the whole sensory experience of it. I don't know what it is about that's superior. Maybe it's just something very kind of
Goblin
like Matt
brain.
was talking about. Yeah, it's your goblin brain. It's that part of you that has been part of humans before they were really people. But I was able to experience that from digital technology, and I think that technology is a vehicle for me to have that. But at the same time, I don't know what it is. It's just you have a whole person there, and it's just different than seeing them on a screen.
Yeah, it's not the same.
I want to. It's not to counteract what you're saying, but it's saying the same thing in a very opposite way, because just I really appreciate having that human connection, and I do appreciate the connections that happen online. One of the things that I absolutely hate that happens so much, that happen even today, is the moments when you have such a deep connection, something really, really driving a moment, a interaction, and it's really, really moving forward. And in that moment, technology takes its way in and shuts you down.
Oh, you mean how it's freezing everybody?
How we've been glitching literally this entire episode?
There's the idea that one of the most powerful moments to me, just in general gaming, was the moment me, Kelvin, Christy all played Gauntlet, and we were just smashing away things. We were up at the crazy hours just trying to play that, and it was so hard to do online. Well, it was good to do. It was easy to do that online, but then when we tried to bring Victoria in, the internet just did not want me and Vic to play together at all. It just completely wiped
it
me
just
from existence.
blacklisted both of you from my game. If one was in, the other would get kicked, the other one would get in, the other one would get kicked. It just would not have you both in my game.
And then when we actually got in person to play with Dale and Kelvin and everybody, that experience was also wonky because we just had the game freeze. I think this is also another technology moment, but when everybody's playing that game and you get to that final boss and you're ready to slay it, and the entire cartridge freezes and you have to hit the reset button, and the save was 3 years ago, and so you're oh crap, we got to do this all over again. I think those moments are one of the big infuriating moments that you're I really want this to. If this was a board game, well, I guess the same thing can happen analog. You could have that one moment where the last move needs to be made and somebody kicks the table, and everything is false. That's also happening.
Monopoly, flip the table.
Your brother flips the table.
Yeah.
Game.
Yeah, but the thing about technology is you have to trust that it's going to be there for you. Because, you know, a lot of these people that are doing their online games now, they're switching over to virtual tabletops because they can't meet in person because of being quarantined and things like that.
Yeah.
They have to switch over, and then they switch over and they're trying to get there, and all of a sudden you see a tweet come out from the virtual tabletop that says, we're going to be down for the next 2 hours.
Right.
After that, Dungeon Master has put all this work into learning a new program, all this prep work into importing the maps, setting up the character tokens, getting it so everybody can see in the dynamic lighting, which is a pain in the butt.
Dynamic lighting.
Yeah, I feel like that
ticks you
also.
off more than moving somebody's token onto the board and they're saying, I can't see anything.
Yeah, it's all black, Michael. I can't see shit, and you're like.
Well, I think that kind of speaks to something really important that actually, like, in my philosophy class that kind of is the reason that we're doing this, that we've talked about, is that we're constantly staring at these screens all day, but they're very much taken for granted. And we also imbue a lot of emotional connection into them that normally is really for people. But, you know, think about how often our technology here at Provo glitches, and we get so mad at it, but it's it's not a person. And we have this expectation that it's going to always work for us. And when it doesn't, we are like, what are you doing, Discord? What are you doing, Roll20? But the technology doesn't choose. Maybe it does choose.
It does.
But, you know, we kind of have that expectation that because this technology is a tool, it will always be reliable because it's not a person, but it messes up and we get mad at it, and it's those
Internet,
moments.
you're only doing this because you know I have a stream in 5 minutes.
Yeah. See, can I piggyback off that a little bit?
Yeah.
Because I've been DMing for a couple months now for my home game live at the table for my cousins, my 2 cousins, my uncle, and my boyfriend Calvin, and they're my party, and I'm the DM because I'm the only one that knows what the fuck I'm doing. But when we had to transition to Discord, there's the learning curve. I'm so used to Discord that I was like, yes, I can be a DM on Discord. Like, that made me feel much more comfortable and safe, even though they're my family. But I feel I get a lot more anxiety at the table as a DM because I'm not a DM person. But when it switched to digital, I was excited. But then the learning curve kicked in, and then Discord acted up with my audio, and they're like, Christy, you're breaking up, we can't hear you. So, like, while I'm so excited to be able to have my family transition to Discord and try this digital tabletop with Roll20, they were not enjoying it as much as I was because they were struggling to hear what I was saying.
Yeah, and I think
like, they were very disconnected.
What Michael had been saying about proficiency bonus, like all our backlog of content being like a kind of archive of learning. At the same time, when you play at a table, whatever source books you have, whatever minis and tokens you have, that's it. And you either make it happen or you don't. With the digital technology, there's infinite amounts of information that you can access. And I know I definitely feel overwhelmed sometimes, like going on D&D Beyond and seeing like every source book and errata and like, you know, Unearthed Arcana that has come out for it. And it can definitely, there's that learning curve, and there's so much information out there that it can be great because you can always find what you want, but at the same time you have to like slog and sort through so much content.
Yeah, especially for like the older generation. Like my uncle, like he taught us like pretty much first edition D&D back in the early 2000s, late 90s. And transitioning him to 5th edition was a struggle as it was, but now just transitioning him to like Roll20 and D&D Beyond and how he finds his spells, like this is a learning curve that he's not used to. He's used to like the full like tangible feeling of the D&D spectrum, and he's not used to this. So I could tell that he was a lot more quiet this game. In our previous in our new digital game, he was a lot more quiet. He was a lot more struggling. He would focus more on the actual technology and not the game. Whereas everyone else was okay because they're younger. They're about my age or younger. They could easily adapt to the Roll20 and Discord technologies. Whereas my uncle struggled a lot more, and it was a lot more noticeable for him to be like a little disconnected in the game.
Yeah. Matt, did you have something you wanted to contribute?
Yeah, so a couple of people like brushed past something that was one of the things that was on my mind before we even started tonight. To frame it back, and then you had asked the question of like, what are your pros and cons? about digital technology. And I think, on the pro side, for me, as we've, pretty well covered, the fact that it does allow you to cast your net wider than, it can be very difficult in this day and age to find people in your immediate vicinity to engage in these things with. I think that's a huge pro for technology, is it allows us to find people to connect. And I think with the six of us, we're across 2 different countries and, three different states within those of us who are in the United States. That's a huge benefit towards technology. I think on the drawback side, you, sort of as I had said before, I think in a way it sort of tricks our goblin brain into thinking like, yes, this is the peoples that I crave, but it's not the same. We didn't evolve a brain that truly understands, 6 of us sitting in a Discord call having a conversation for an hour or 2 as the same thing as like having your people in the same room. There's that tactile element to it and everything else. But I think at least 2 people like touched on this as they were talking about their experience with D&D as it relates to digital playing online, playing digitally. And it's something that I thought about, like was thinking about before we even came into this. And that's using technology as it relates to play and to social interaction when you take into account things like mental health and anxiety and social anxiety. A little bit of an, kind of an anecdote without, obviously without naming any names or calling anybody out. Not that anybody would know who this is anyway, but, in my experience, I've played with a lot of people over the years, and I've played with people who I have played, transitioned back and forth over as the years have gone on, both in person and online. And I've played with people who have been very open about their struggles with, social anxiety and dealing with those types of things. And it has always been an observation of mine that the sort of the extra kind of safety net barrier of the screen of the digital world seems to be a very, very powerful and very, very helpful tool for people to be able to engage in these, in this type of thing, this type of social thing where, maybe just the fact of having to like get showered and get dressed and get ready and get presentable and get out the door and go somewhere at a certain time and meet people can be overwhelming if you're a type of person who has trouble with that sort of thing.
If you have the spoons for it or not that day.
Right.
Everybody's slowly learning the whole, you get on camera, you're dressed from like the
Here up. You don't know my pants.
For some people, it just, it just lowers that bar of how much mental and emotional
energy
you have to invest towards something, to be able to just be in your own house and turn on your camera and still get to interact with your friends. So I think it's an amazing tool in this day and age to be able to experience play online where there are people who might otherwise be isolated by their own mental and emotional stuff that they might be working on and going through.
Yeah. I mean, I said it before just a few minutes ago, like I felt way more comfortable despite it being family and my boyfriend DMing behind my laptop versus at the table.
So
that's pure anxiety. Like has nothing to do with my safety level with them.
I'm going to throw a question to Christy here. Okay?
Sure.
Going way back. Let's go way back, say, like, almost 3 years ago.
Okay.
You respond to an ad looking for a D&D player, but specifically also a cast member.
Yeah.
Would it have been different? Would your decision change to fill out that application if it was an in-person game
Oh, you mean an application to get murdered? Sounds like.
Touche, Matt.
I'm just saying, would that have changed if it wasn't on Roll20 Virtual World? Would it have changed your response to something like that had it been more of a, hey, we're going to play this at my house?
It would change my approach. I feel like I definitely still would have applied for it if I knew that for the first while I could bring a chaperone. If I could bring Kelvin with me, I would feel safe enough to do that, because I've done modeling and acting here in person, but I almost always bring a chaperone because I don't know what the heck. I don't know people.
Take away the creeper aspect.
Taking away the creeper aspect, I don't think it would have changed that much, honestly, because like I do auditions. I've done acting and modeling. I like being on camera. Do I like being a DM? Not really. Being an actor and an active player, I don't think that would change my approach to applying at the very least. I feel like I would have more anxiety, and I would feel like I would have much lower expectations if I were to go in person, because I'd be like, they're not going to pick me. Whereas with online, I have this social, the social media presence, and I can, just show from here up. You don't know how tiny I am. You don't know how vulnerable I look. I would definitely approach it differently. Would I still apply? 100% yes.
Yeah. I think that kind of is a good connector into another question that I have of what does it mean to play for an audience? On Twitch, which is that's what we do. All of us here, that's our connection, is that we all do this. We play for an audience on Twitch through the Proficiency Bonus channel. And I think that kind of ties in, what does it say about play when play becomes a performance? Or is it a performance? What do you think is the connection there?
I kind of want to just direct the question a little bit more specifically to Michael, because I've been itching to ask this question for months now.
Uh-oh. And I haven't been preparing to answer this for months. I feel backed into a corner.
We have these sessions a lot where we do. From the games that I played at home versus the games that we played on stream, there's a lot more performance in the sense of let's do ourselves up, let's create these characters. And one of the things I admire to this day, I would tell anybody, if you want to look at any of my Facebook pictures, you will see that this picture is one of my most favorite. But the day that Michael created the artwork for Kills, based off of the costume pieces that I put together, to this day, that is one of my favorite character art pieces that I've ever seen or received, because it's just it is, one, it looks just like me, and two, it has the performance elements that I brought to the game. But I'm wondering, do you put that same kind of effort in your non-stream games? Because I've only known you as a streamer DM. So the non-streamer DM, do you still have that performance element? Do you still put on that skull mask that's really
that's a good question. I only play in one game that is not streamed. So most of my stuff is online, and but the Sunday game that I did, I started it 2 years ago. The local game store around here didn't have a D&D Adventures. So I was going to be that pioneer. I was going to pioneer the D&D Adventures League at my local game store. That's 20 minutes down the road. But I started by just taking a small group. It ended up being 8 people. It ended up whittling down to 6 because of schedules. But I started Storm King's Thunder with them, and we just finished it a few weeks. But I do not do all of the razzle dazzle with my non-stream games because it's at someone else's house. And I've got to, basically, it just worked out better for me to just take my TV, and we use that as a map, and I projected all the maps via my laptop onto the television. I still did a lot of the character stuff, and it depends on your group too. This group was more they would narrate more so what their players do rather than be in the character, you know? And I also had my son playing who's in 6th grade, and one of these other adults that answered the call brought his son, who is also just like a year older than my son. So I had little kids, old timers playing in this group. It was a wide variety of people. So I kind of adapted my play style to fit theirs for the campaign in general. So sometimes I would act out the people and let them kind of ask me questions back and try to encourage it. But if I felt they were getting uncomfortable, I would back out of that and go more into the third person. This person does this, describing them, which is something Matt was saying about having the screen almost as like that extra buffer. Sometimes as a dungeon master, I don't necessarily like it that much because people have an aura about themselves that you can feel. And when you're sitting around table with people, like I can tell easier if Charner's getting bored. I need to address him in the game. I can pick up on those, I guess, non-verbal, just
the micro expressions and the force
Yes.
of personality. There's a force to a
That's
person.
probably why I don't like DMing in person.
that's the thing. Like I can tell a little bit better sitting around a table when I need to jump and address this character, or I'm going to lose them for a little while and I'm going to have to really reel them back in. Or if I said something that might have hurt this person's feelings by accident, maybe we need to take a 5-minute break and I need to address that. There's just that aura that I feel from people when I'm closer in proximity to them and around a real table, I think. That's just my opinion. I don't know if it's...
No, not just you. No, not just you.
And that's also harder to deal with a stream as well, because if that does happen on camera in a way that you feel that visually, or there's some sort of sound cue that you get from that, and you also have a bunch of people watching this at the same time, how do you navigate? All right, let's either address this or let's back out of this. That does seem kind of hard.
It's kind of when you receive a text message from somebody and you're not sure if it's sarcasm or if they're being truthful and things like that. And then you sit there and you think about it for 24 hours and you can't sleep.
Yes.
I feel so called out right now.
Like, I think one of the things is like this technology and these screens, they're a really great tool for connecting us, but at the same time, it's a middleman. And instead of the person to person, you're going to lose things in translation when a person has to go through something else to get to another person. And I think that's one of the things that is a bit of a downside to playing on technology and also for an audience is you have to go into technology understanding that, and that it's a little bit harder to communicate, and you have to be willing to take steps to overcome that and have certain confrontations and conversations and be transparent. And that's really hard to do in person. So doing it online I don't think it's necessarily going to be easier or harder because of the same issues of not understanding people the same way. And I think that can, and not even just for gaming, but just communicating and being around other people in any digital landscape, it's going to be a difficulty.
I would say that going back to the question, does streaming the game change how we play? At least for me, I don't feel it does. And I'll tell you why. It's because I'll use Lip as an example here, because I've played with him off stream much longer than I've played with him on stream. There's no fucking difference. And I feel that it applies to me as well when I'm playing as Monday as Aki, and I get just as like emotive as if I were to be Callista. And I don't feel that my offline games versus my on-stream games and my character portrayals change just because I know people are watching. Because when I'm immersed in the game, I forget all the time that we're streaming. The only thing that keeps me aware that I'm streaming is if I'm the one producing, which then only disconnects me because then I have to worry about music and all that other stuff. I'm not worried about the Twitch chat. I'm worried about the schematics and the production side of things. And then I have to bring myself back into the character. It's just a weird, odd offshoot of distraction for me. But when we're streaming, I forget that there's an audience. Especially when I'm drawn in. And I see that with Lip when he plays online and when he plays on our Monday game. Or our Sunday, or especially our Sunday game. Our Sunday game gets hella soap opera-y, and we're not online. I don't know. It just doesn't feel like it changes, at least from my perspective. It might be different from other people, but for me personally, I don't feel like us streaming our D&D games changes the gameplay. And I think that was reiterated at Gen Con, because it felt like a stream game at Gen Con.
I have an angle on this that I want to hear all of your opinions on. So my answer to this question is in terms of like how into it I get. Am I doing the voices? Am I being crazy? Am I whatever else? No, there is no difference between my at-home unstreamed game and I am performing for a Twitch audience. However, my answer to the question of like, do you feel like streaming changes the way that you approach D&D would be yes. And it's in this way. And this is what I'm curious to hear from all of you about as well. I feel a pressure, a responsibility when streaming D&D, when creating a story, when telling a story, whether in most cases it's as a dungeon master or whether I'm even a player taking part in this story, I feel a responsibility. If this is something that I'm going to be creating and putting out for people to watch, we come back to talking about hoboism and the responsibility of the DM to make sure that's wrong. I've asked things privately to a number of you guys in sort of our like private DM chats. I've asked things like, how would you guys go about respectfully and in a realistic way portraying a transgender character? How would you guys approach issues? It might be filtered through the lens of orcs and elves and how they get along versus African American people and white people. I feel a responsibility to take a real look at the underlying sort of social issues that I think D&D does a really cool job of letting us play with, and making sure that if this is something that I'm going to put out to people who might be watching, I want to do that in a way that is going to, not alienate certain groups or is going to do something good for the world. I want to portray that transgender character in a way that makes that a real person, and and in a way that takes a really honest look at what their struggles might be like and what their life might be like. So that is how I feel. The way that I approach play, specifically through Dungeons and Dragons, is changed when I'm streaming. I feel a much greater responsibility to
the millions of faces
to take those things seriously.
Yeah, you don't know who's
as
gonna
opposed
watch.
to like, right, if we make some dumb insensitive joke, which not that I'm saying we're a bunch of like jackass.
Sometimes we are.
But there's a difference between like making an comment or being a crummy murder hobo when it's just 5 of us in a room, and something that you're going to put on the internet and people can potentially find and see and be inspired by, as we've talked about, or be influenced by, or might be taking something away from of how they're going to approach the real world going forward.
Yeah, yes. I was actually going to just touch on that too, because I think that, to answer your question, Chrissy, I do think that, like, yes, I agree that I would at least say our execution of character work does not change between like our games offline versus our games online. But I do think that the gravitas of what is said, the nature, how we go about the storytelling does alter. I think specifically of, not to give anyone spoilers, go watch all of the shows on the stream that is out there forever, enjoy them, but particular episodes of a certain show where a very scrupulous thing and made somebody's information very public. That was a very naughty video. Had a very interesting take that I thought of 90% of the things that we do offline, the sessions that we have offline, something like that probably wouldn't have as much, because I think that we hit a lot of those marks throughout each session. Just thinking about like the last session that we went through, there's a lot of hatred, there's a lot of discussion of like racial barriers, gender barriers. There was a whole conversation on gender that we just kind of openly talked about in the session. And there wasn't that pressure that like we have to somewhat fix this. In the Sunday campaigns, a lot of the problems and a lot of issues don't get fixed. They just like put out there and they're just ugly and they stay ugly, which is one of the things I do enjoy about the Sunday campaign. Situation where we have, it's awful, but it's really great.
You're not wrong.
Moments when somebody, two players within the same adventuring group will look at each other and just say, to the core of who you are, I absolutely hate. I don't have to have a reason to like you, and I just don't. And if there's a moment where you get hit by a massive carriage and it just rolls over your body, you die, I would be okay with that. And that is such a hideous, disgusting moment that happens in a campaign. And the party kind of affects the way they affect. This is who we are as a character, and just kind of move forward. Whereas I think what was interesting about what we did for our campaign online is that it was a gross thing that we did, and we were just like, that sucks. We're going to mention it and say like, this is not great, but we prefaced a lot of what we were saying as, well, we're mercenaries, it's what we do, just in case anybody's just now tuning into this. We're mercenaries, we're not meant to be good people, but I swear this is not who I really am.
And it's Shadowrun, it's a lot darker.
Right.
It's a lot darker.
Yeah, that took thank you for that clarification, because Christy was confused. I was like, what are you talking about? I was trying to like,
so confused, so I popped it in the chat.
for a second I thought you were talking about Sunday, and I was like, there's so much shit that happens on Sunday that I couldn't like figure out what you were talking about. Now I got it. Okay. Yeah. No spoilers.
Shadowrun is definitely the proficiency bonus. Like, that's definitely, I think, our darker game. But I think it works, and I think that it's a really good party for it. And I think Michael's done a fantastic job of facilitating it in a way that is, it's gritty and it's stressful.
Yes.
And it kind of satisfies those darker like things that you want to get out of a Shadowrun game without being like, like Michael's not, I don't think the kind of person that would put something together that would make me like genuinely cringe. Like, I like playing in my episode that I guested in for that, like I definitely like, there was the inter-party conflict and we were stressed and we were just doing some stuff that was like it was definitely morally muddy, but like it was facilitated in a way that was like, it was still an area that was like safe. And we all kind of like, if our characters were going to do things that were questionable, I think everybody knew, like, this doesn't necessarily speak to my own personal opinions. This is a character. And I think we all also agree that there are certain things that we're just never going to do, because even if it is a character, you just don't do that. And I think there's some drama with that happening in the tabletop community right now, of people engaging in certain in-game behaviors that you just don't do that. But I think we have like a really safe community where we can kind of like address difficult things, but we know that it doesn't necessarily speak to who we are as people outside of our characters.
Right. And I feel like maybe the DMs, like maybe because I'm not a DM on stream, that I feel like maybe the DMs are probably way more heavily affected than the players in terms of how they approach the game and maybe change their style or their approach versus the players.
Mean, Michael dropped that like 2-year backstory thing with like with Callista's dad being a Drider, and then like with the priest guy being like the betrayer and everything for Storm King's Thunder. Like, Michael did a lot of work for that.
Michael plays the longest game.
Maybe that's just Michael, but also, you know, like I can't help but think like that's a very good long game performance to put on, and that required, I think, a lot of thought and consideration for many different steps. That I think putting that, when you put that online, the effect and what the audience gets out of that is so much bigger than what it would just be if it was just a table game.
That's what I just want to disclaim too, because I want to make sure it's not misunderstood if any of our Sunday folks are watching. I do want to shout out to the Sunday DM. I think that one of the things that's been very hard for that campaign is just we do hit a lot of extremely touchy subjects. Like we scratched a lot of surfaces that I think are really dope to talk about afterwards, and we made like a point to talk about these things after the session ended. We find a lot of ways to kind of laugh some of the serious stuff up, but it does take a huge shout out to all the DMs really that we've talked about to do a really good job of saying, I'm going to take this gravity of this nature of what we're talking about, and I'm going to put it in a realm where it feels safe. Like you were talking about that safe space to kind of go into these dangerous realms. That takes a very substantially skilled DM to open that realm and just have that be a space for people to roam around freely. That's one of the reasons why I feel like campaigns like that don't do very well online, because that DM then has to do 10 times more work of like allowing that space open to the entire world, and constantly keep reminding people who are jumping in now, jumping in 5 seconds from now, jumping in an hour from now, reminding them constantly that this is a space that is completely fictionalized, and we are all trusting each other, kind of go into these dark realms with each other and then come out of it as completely different people.
Yeah.
I feel like a game like what we play on Sunday just would not work, because eventually we will be saying sorry the entire campaign.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And what may be a safe bubble for you and your players may not be a safe bubble for some of those that are tuning in. The extended bubble may not.
Right, especially the
It might not
sensitivity of
fit.
what Sunday touches on. I could definitely see how, like, maybe I feel like we're also very lucky. We have a very small community currently, and it's always been super supportive. Like, very rarely do we get the trolls in here. Knock on wood that it stays that way. But I feel like we're very lucky with how we stream and the people that watch us.
Yeah.
So,
But I desire to be a little bit more like Matt, in the sense that when he's thinking about, how to, create that safe space within his characters, within his campaign that he's putting together. But at the same time, not being afraid to address those things too, I think is important. Because I think that it speaks volumes of who we are as human beings and people. Just to have just to be, I guess this comes back to, like, this is going to go off like gatekeeping and things like that, but just to be inclusive and to invite everybody into your world, even if they're not sitting at your table.
Yeah, that's huge.
And I think Matt does an excellent job of that. He's fantastic.
hell yeah.
I think both of you are, as two of our like main. I mean, Michael is like the DM, and Matt does a ton of DM work too. Like, I can't even imagine the extra amount of effort and consideration that has to go in to all of the people that you don't know who might see it, and considering how to make the game entertaining for all of, not just the people at your table, but all those extra people, and how to tell the stories you want to tell together while still keeping the game engaging and also safe. And I think that's probably a lot of work that I don't necessarily understand. And Christy also being primarily a player, like maybe we probably don't get that experience. We get into character because that's what we do.
Yep.
And for the two of you to have to constantly be considering that's a lot of emotional labor. And I don't like to people a lot on the shoulders. Yeah, a lot of the terms that I've used, tonight, like with safe spaces and emotional labor, get kind of panned and mocked in a lot of online communities. But I genuinely think that that's like important work that is being done that doesn't get recognized. Like, sure, it's not drawing a map, but that is, you're having to think about a global community potentially of literally anyone who can get on YouTube.
Yeah. There's part of it that comes down to, like, when you're going to be a DM and when you're telling a story, there is always the drive of, like, I want my world to feel real. So there's, I don't want to sit here and say, like, I'm championing the oppressed by this. There is definitely an aspect to it of like, well, I want this world to feel like a real world with living people who inhabit it, because that makes the experience more enjoyable for my players, for myself, for the people watching. But it's definitely something where you have to, as a DM, if you're the storyteller, you have to be sort of kind of ready to take in anything that gets thrown at you, and be always a little bit cognizant in the back of your head of like, I don't want to default to something that is, might be my, my norm, my reality.
Yeah.
Perfect example from my own game. When my party first arrived to the first big city, they walked up to these two guards standing at a gate, so that they could ask them directions because they had to find a place to go. One of my players started like riffing with these two guards who like didn't have names, were like not NPCs that I had created, but she starts engaging with these guards, and she attached with these guard characters that that we created, and she started doing this thing where she's like sort of shipping them, like, oh, like, you guys have been friends for so long, eh?
Yes.
So it's this pair of male guards who I made up on the spot, and you could easily say like, brush it off, dismiss it, or you could easily make it a joke. But you have to be in that space where when that question comes up, you say, who are these people? Are these real people? And so, this thing with these guards has turned into like, over the course of 20 some odd episodes, hundreds of hours of content, we've like revisited these characters, and they've become this like whole thing. I had to build out this, this life for them. And, they've talked to them, and they took one out for a drink, and, they've discovered like, oh, well, like now there's like this huge romantic entanglement that's going on of like, one of them definitely has feelings for the others, and we don't know, we don't.
Oh my God, yes.
It becomes this whole thing, which is, I think becomes something that the players invest in as the people you have around the table, but also something that, the audience watching can get behind of like, these are real, these could be real people. And this is, I've spent way more time and emotional and mental energy dedicated to like, what would it be like if I was to be a person who, what if I was gay? What would my journey be like? And and the fear that came with, we've come into this situation where we've got a character who is, potentially has feelings for somebody that has been their friend for years and years and years since they were a child. They don't know if they're going to share those feelings, and letting that be real and carry the gravity that would for this, if this person was a real person, I think does, or I hope anyway, does justice to anybody out there who that has been their experience in life.
And I think the one thing you do with that's really important is you include those different life experiences and different identities without making them the plot point. Sure. Like those are two people, and they both happen to be men, but the story isn't about, well, I'm gay and this is my gay struggle. It's I have feelings for someone, and I don't know if this person likes me, and that's the kind of thing that is not driven by their marginalized identity. It's driven by something that all people like can understand. And I think that's the really important thing to do online, that I think all of the DMs here, especially like Matt and Mike and Michael, like you two do this very well. Like you've been able to incorporate like a lot of different characters, and you do it in a way that is sensitive and makes them seem real and dynamic, and it doesn't reduce them to some kind of marginalized stereotyped trope. Like you can have tropey characters without making it into making someone's real world identity into a farce. Yeah. And I think that's so important, especially like with this online medium. And I think both of you do that really well, like of making
Agreed.
Real people.
So I think what we're saying here is we're heroes. And
hell yeah, no.
I would say too, like straddling the title of DM on a global spectrum versus a table perspective. one of the things I found, because I am a player globally typically, but I am a DM at the table most of the time. And I found that watching other people play DM global makes me uncomfortable as a DM at the table, because I always think when you start a campaign, right, like, you know, at least a subsect of the people that are coming to your table, you're able to have that conversation with the people at the table saying, this is the genre we want to go for. We're going to do this module, or we're going to have this kind of world. And you can even, it's me as a DM, I like to try and get to know the players and say, like, what is it that you're looking forward to in this game? What is it that you want to get out of this game? And I tailor a lot of the story based off of what I get from the players. Whereas you have an additional player at the table that is the rest of the people watching the show. And so you can have a genre that's really interesting. You can have characters that are really dynamic, but on top of the rest of the players saying, this is a character that I really find interesting. On our Sunday campaign, there's one of my personal favorite characters, Scarlet. She is a national gem of a person. But I do know that if we were to bring that show to a global perspective, the rest of us as players are in love with who Scarlet is. But the public could just be like, no, we care more about Okuma. We want more of this one other person. We really care about these other characters. And because of that other person sitting at the table that is a global perspective, they either get shunned out because they lose to the masses, or we as a group end up losing to what the masses kind of want. And I noticed that in a lot of games that kind of get a lot of sway, a lot of personality. I was thinking me and Ani were looking at the adventures, and a lot of people will fall in love with an NPC or fall in love with a playable character. And that because of that, the story kind of sways in that direction. Whereas with us as a party, if we're playing offline, most of the players will do the same thing. I love this NPC. I want this NPC to be there. And when you were talking specifically about shipping, I think about that a lot. I think how we as players, online or offline, we usually kind of drive the story, but there are intentional times where we're just like, we intentionally want to shift this plot. And I do like some of the things that some DMs offline have done, where they'll say, like, that same situation, a party comes upon 2 men or 2 women, and they just kind of want to ship them together as a couple. But then there's also the very real fact that it's like, you all are putting an identity on 2 people that they don't have that. In that same way, to Vic's kind of point, you can still tell a very interesting story, but also kind of gauging that, like, yeah, I see this is where the party wants to go, but, like, let's also be mindful about the fact that this is a real story that I want to tell. If this is a fantasy world where you kind of just create the world as you go, then sure, let's go in that direction. But also, let's play with the idea of, what is it like 5 adventurers walk up to 2 guards people and just say, you all are going to be in love with each other. And you're just, whoa, this is too much. And then actually play that.
We kind of had that situation Zos did it to herself, but going back to the very beginning of Storm King's Thunder, she immediately zoned in on Zulkin and forced the question on you to consider, is Zulkin hot? Is he attractive? Does Diana find this random NPC with like one line in the book, and she just attached and latched onto him, and he ended up being, spoilers, like one of the biggest big bad guys that we had to deal with.
And I don't like doing that. I really don't, because I can't assume that the person in my mind is attractive to you. So it's like I don't know. Roll something. Just roll a dice.
Yeah, we rolled the dice, and yeah, it turns out she finds him attractive. What are you gonna do, Michael?
yeah, he's so. We'll go with that.
Wow. Yeah, I think we're kind of pushing our time limit for what we can reasonably do here, just with other people's life goings on, and also Final Fantasy VII. Christy has a mighty.
Well, I still have some time. It's not officially out until midnight. I still have 8, 9, 10, 11. I have 4 hours.
Things I need to get to as well.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, does anyone have any final thoughts about this conversation about what it means to game in a socio-technical world, you know, in and play and all of just the different points? Does anyone have any like last bits that they want to put out there and just say any ideas that maybe we didn't get a chance to touch on?
I feel so lucky. I feel so lucky that we have the means to do this. I wouldn't know where I'd be currently. Like the fact that, like I said, discussing with Matt, that I do have that social anxiety, and this forced me out of my shell, albeit across long distances with you guys. But I feel so lucky and so grateful to have met you in person. And even if we hadn't met in person, I'm still internally grateful that I have you guys in my life. So for that much is said, thank you, technology. Even though you like to fuck with us all the time, I still appreciate you.
True. I guess I would say if anyone that is just a kind of a sit around the table, have your friends over DM or in one of those groups, don't be afraid of the technology that's out there. I know it's probably not as good as sitting around the table with everybody else, but I would say this is a close second. You're probably not going to get, it's going to be difficult any other means. So
yeah, D&D's real hard sending like smoke signals.
Exactly.
We haven't gotten to 4D smells yet, but we're working on it.
I've heard of people like doing like text chat D&D
Oh, yeah.
and things of that nature and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I just don't think I would have my ADD I would forget to answer back to people and stuff like that. And that campaign would last years and years and years. But but I'm just saying, I know there's a lot of people that are freaking out because they want to have their games and they're having to turn to technology, and the learning curve, while it may seem kind of steep, there are a plethora of YouTube videos that you can go online and learn how to do this stuff. Yes, it may take you a little while. It may take you a week or two to get it online. But it is definitely worth it. So
I will say, I'll say the like naggy mom thing first and then the heartfelt thing second. Naggy mom, stay at home if you can. Reduce the curve, please. That being said,
yes, mother.
Flatten that curve, Beach.
In the same vein, I do get it. Like, if anybody knows me, all of you all have gotten to know me enough to know that I am a moveaholic, workaholic, socialholic. This is torturous. This is definitely torturous. But in this way that this is torturous, I try my best to find these moments. And one of the things I think is beautiful about Proficiency Bonus, beautiful about 20 Sides to Every Story, there's tons of organizations out there that have an open seat for you particularly. And it doesn't have to be D&D. There's some trivia games that are happening online. There's people who are, I'm pretty sure, playing Monopoly somewhere. Cards Against Humanity. Some of the things that me and Chrissy found out is that you can actually play Jackbox online. That sense of social interaction, that gaming online, it's out there, and there is an open position, an open spot for you out there. So that sense of kind of feeling like you're buried and kind of isolated from the world is true, but not 100% true. There's definitely some form of something out there. We just hope that technology can withstand a lot, because I know a lot of us are going through some weird service issues, kind of things lagging, as you can see on our actual show, but it's out there. It's just, you just got to look, and you got to restart your modem a couple of times and it'll work. Definitely go out there if you can, make it work. Play PlayStation. If you guys want any of my information, I'm on PlayStation. I have a Steam. I got my phone. I just got Stadia. There's tons. Stadia is as you guys can all get it if you guys want to get it. Jump onto all out there.
Matt, any closing remarks about the topic or anything in specific you want to just put out there before we go off into the void?
Yeah, just to reiterate that we're heroes, and hell
yeah.
No, actually, I do want to, so as we ride off into the sunset here, think we've all touched on how important social interaction is, and what an important function play and games serve in getting that for ourselves as social beings. And in this day and age, it can seem, even before quarantine and everything else, it can seem hard to find people to connect to. And I just want to sort of put it out there to the world, because it took somebody saying this to me to sort of start the journey that led me to like sitting in this chair right now, having multiple game nights a week and having this community that I'm part of. If you're sitting at home right now and you're, I want to play D&D, I want to make friends, I want to meet people, I want to socialize, I feel isolated, I feel like I'm alone. And you're like waiting for somebody to come find you and be like, "Come, follow me, Charlie. The chocolate." Be Willy Wonka. All it takes is for you to make the step to reach out and try and find people, and you will find immediately there are so many other people also looking for that. And sometimes all it takes is for one person to be the one who kind of puts it upon their shoulders to say, I'll be the linchpin that brings a bunch of people together. And it can be scary, it can be difficult, but it is it's so important, and with technology you will find it is so much you possibly imagine to find people out there to game with and to play with and to socialize with.
Yeah, and that kind of ties in really well with like just my kind of finishing remark, is that I think one of the biggest takeaways I've had from this conversation with all of you is that at its core, games and play is about connection and about telling stories for a multitude of different purposes, and it's something that I think is very... Ooh, I'm getting an echo.
It just makes you more ethereal.
Thanks. Yeah, that's what makes us human, and I think technology, it has its flaws, and it may not always compare to being in person with other people playing, but at the same time, there are things that it can do that make life a lot easier for people who may have barriers preventing them from play. And so I just think that the big takeaway for me is that technology it's a tool, and it can facilitate a lot of things. And I think that, storytelling will always be storytelling, no matter what medium you're going through it, be it in person or online. And I just think this was a really interesting conversation to have with all of you, and I feel like I learned a lot.
Yeah, it's a tool we're lucky to have, and yeah, I'm all about it.
Just except for not when it glitches. And
except for when it glitches, because then, yeah,
then we don't like it.
get the fuck out. Oh boy.
If you liked all of Matt's opinions tonight, please click up here and follow the channel. I think it's above.
They're all right.
There you go. They're all right.
They're all 100% accurate.
Yeah, make sure you follow us on Twitch and YouTube and sub, all of those things.
Yeah, hit that subscribe button, hit that like bell, ding that bell for notifications. You know the drill.
Are on every day of the week.
Literally every day of the week, and especially me with quarantine.
Coming out all the time, like every week practically. There's like a new game announced. Like there's just so much content.
Up at 6 a.m. We will be there playing. A game.
I mean,
you are experiencing
tonight.
The horror that is a reverse sleep schedule from the pandemic and having no schedule. We got you.
We got you. I got you at Final Fantasy VII tonight at midnight. Hey.
And another big thing, of course, always thank you to all of our sponsors and our supporters. Twitch, OBS, Streamlabs, Team MZ, Many Sided Dice, and of course, Little Dragon Corp. You can go on their website. You can get that coupon code PROBONUS and get 10% off of your order for some gaming supplies that, you know what, you can still use even if you're not playing at a table.
We use it all the time.
We roll real dice on Wednesdays. You can roll real dice at a digital game too.
Hell yeah.
Why you watch?
Christy, anything else? My takeover is done. I relinquish the reins back into you.
Thanks.
Oh my God, my lord.
It was kind of nice that I didn't have to ask all the questions this time. Thanks. I loved it. No, yes, as I said, if I'm still awake at midnight, Mystic Hour Gaming is back tonight for Final Fantasy VII Remake. I'm not joking. I'm literally coming back, y'all. There's no actual schedule here.
3 hours of Christy asleep with a controller in her hand.
Hell yeah. That's literally what we got planned.
I bet Christy does snore. She totally snores.
I admit to nothing. But yeah, if you've been hanging out with us in chat, and if you're watching this on YouTube, thank you. We love you so much. And
Thank you so much.
I will see you later tonight. And if not, I will see you guys next week on Mystic Hour. Okay, love you. Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you, BBs. I love
Stay
you.
home.
Stay home. Wash your hands.
Wash your hands, you dirty animals.
I love you. Bye.
Cut it.